We're up to the blue paint, and I have started a little masking. The actual tape I'm using, it's a 3M product, but it's very, very similar, if not the same thing, as the nice Tamiya masking tape. And it's also very similar to this frog tape. Now this frog tape, you can get this, I think, at any of the big box stores in the US and probably elsewhere. But it's also very similar to the 3M and the Tamiya, with the exception being this frog tape. It's not quite as smooth on the outside. It's more of a not really cloth, just kind of a paper type tape. Whereas the 3M and the Tamiya tape are really kind of a smooth, maybe a sealed paper. Maybe that's the best way to put it. So it's a little bit smoother on the outside, but the tack on both of these are basically identical. I don't know, it might be a tell from the sound. Basically identical. This frog tape works really well. It seals really well. I don't think I ever had any bleed through issues with using this frog tape. But the 3M tape is really good. So for the taping part, now remember, I'm taping up the yellow now to shoot the blue. And one thing I did when I taped the white primer to spray the yellow was I actually extended the tape a little bit past the marked line that I had, so that the yellow kind of covers the pencil lines that I had made. But those pencil lines still kind of show through. And so now what I'm doing when I tape to mask the yellow, I'm trying to just get that tape right on the paint edge and leaving the pencil marks that kind of still show through the yellow, leaving them visible so that the blue will cover all that, and hopefully there will not be any pencil lines being shown. The stripes on the fuselage and on the vertical fin do not have sharp corners. They're rounded over. So to do that, I'd cut some discs and some tape using a sharpened brass tube. After they were applied in place, then I went over with some straight tape to connect the dots, if you will. The diameter of the fuselage appears to be smaller than that on the vertical fin, so I used a 1/8 inch brass tube for the fuselage dots. And I used a 3/8 inch brass tube for the dots on the vertical fin, and I'll show you those a little later in the video. Part of masking to shoot the blue was I needed to shoot this registration code at the same time. It appears to be the same color, so I wanted to go and shoot it at the same time. This is an Australian-based aircraft, and I don't know the actual size of these letters. I suppose I could have looked up Australian version of FAA and find out what the Australian requirements are, but I was too lazy to do that. Instead, to get these dimensions, I decided to just set up a ratio. So the rest of this is just me babbling on about setting up a ratio, trying to find the height of the letters on the real aircraft. Well, the Australian version of the FAA has a requirement of aircraft under 5,700 kilograms. The minimum height is 150 millimeters, which is about 6 inches. Well, I don't think those letters look to be 6 inches tall in the photos. And if you take the 6 inch tall letter and divide by 3, this is a 1/3 scale model, you would get a 2 inch tall letter. Well, looking at the rudder and looking at a 2 inch tall letter, that would be much too big. So I came up with about 1 inch to look to be about the right size. And I think I actually could have gotten away with even smaller, maybe 7/8 of an inch or 3/4 of an inch. That would have looked about right compared to the photos. And in the same vein, I figured out or determined that the width of the letters should be about 4 1/4 inches wide. And that looks pretty good. I'll give you a preview of what I've already done, and that looks to be about right. This is the cutter that I'm using. It's a US cutter Titan 3. I have my good friend Greg to thank for me getting this. He has a vinyl cutter and he showed me what he could do with it, and I was so impressed that I decided to get one for myself. I thought it would be very useful. I've had this for a year and a half, and it's been sitting in the box for that year and a half until yesterday, and I finally decided to go ahead and get it out and plug it in and try to figure out how it all works. I'll show you that, and I'm not going to show you how I did any of this because, like I said, I'm a rank beginner. I'll just show you what I have with the file. So the font is an Arial font. It looks to be spot on to what the picture shows. The height is 1 inch and the length is 4 1/4 inches, just as we measured. So anyway, it's ready to print or cut. So I'll send to the cutter. And here we go. We are off to the races. All right, so here's the design. When I cut it, I added a 1/4 inch weed box around the code so that when I go to put it on the rudder, I can also tape along the edges and continue that masking tape out for the rest of the rudder. So now I guess comes the weeding part. And I'm probably not doing this in the correct order, but what I did the first time, and it worked, is I used my transfer tape, and I put the transfer tape over the top of the vinyl, and then I peeled off the vinyl so that the design stays with the transfer tape, and then took that over to the rudder. So I trimmed back the transfer tape to the top edge, and what I have are a couple of tick marks, and I'm just going to line the top edge with the tick marks. This ink should wash away, I think, with alcohol, so I don't think it'll stay there. Either alcohol or lacquer thinner. I don't think anything is going to affect this paint. I'm using this little burnishing tool to burnish down. This vinyl is going over top of some of the simulated rib stitching that I have. All right. I think it's going to work okay. While I'm playing around with the vinyl cutter, there was one more thing I wanted to do. Back in update 34 at the beginning of that video, I mentioned that I had been informed that Matt Mrdeza, the designer of this build, the designer of these plans, had suddenly and unexpectedly passed away. Apparently it was early May of 2025. So what I want to do is a little tribute to him. I'm not going to put these 3 names of the actual aircraft owners on the side. Instead, I'm going to put a little tribute to him by doing design by Matt Mrdeza. And right now this is a vinyl decal. I had originally intended to make a paint mask and paint this black, but I had black in the vinyl, so I just decided to go ahead and make it a vinyl decal for now. I'll go ahead and paint everything, and then I can always come back and take this off and remask and paint if I want to go that route. But I think overall it looks pretty good. I'm kind of happy with it. It was also a chance for me to play around a little bit. I actually added this airplane symbol to the D. I just wanted to see if I could do it. I think it looks pretty neat. Anyway, I hope Matt would like this. All the masking for the blue is complete. Fuselage and the wing and all the little smaller pieces. This took me a good 4, maybe 5 days, about 15 hours total, quite a bit. That's the thing about painting. Painting is actually pretty quick. It's the masking that takes a long time. Anyway, it is ready. The hardest part, I guess, was on the real aircraft on these corners here. It's circular. It's not really come to a point. So what I did, I think I showed earlier with these pieces, that this is a smaller diameter. I think it's an 1/8 of an inch circle. These are a larger diameter. Maybe it's 3/8, I forget. But so I cut the circle out, put it on, and then applied the straight sections. That took quite a bit of time. And the one thing about this aircraft, the real aircraft, which is interesting, and I'm not really quite sure why, but this little design on the horizontal stab, it's got a little bit of a triangular shape, and then the same at the trailing edge. It looks like the black goes to the trailing edge and it kind of angles forward a little bit. That's in black, where everything else on this the other color part besides the yellow is in blue. That's really kind of weird. So yeah, I've masked that off to go ahead and paint that as well. Leading edge is black, and then I have my little triangular part in the middle, and it's a little bit of an angle from the root out to the tip here on the horizontal stab. Again, those circular, it's kind of a circular shape on the corners. Up here, it actually looks to be squared off, so that's the way I made it. That was kind of hard to see. One more thing that I really need to do before painting the blue is I need to seal this tape. I don't want any bleed through, so I need to seal to prevent that. So what I'm going to use is a automotive clear coat. And I'm going to use it for 2 reasons. I already mentioned the one reason about sealing the tape. And the other reason for this clear coat is I saw on one of the channels that I subscribe to, it's an automotive body shop. It's called Paint Society. Anyway, the expert on that site, he says one way to get a nice smooth base coat is to apply a gloss clear coat over top of the primer before you put that base coat down. So I'm going to try this. I've never done it before. It's going to be a test. They say you shouldn't test anything on your model, but all of my models become test beds for something. So this will be another test using this clear coat method. We'll see how it goes. I'm now going to spray the clear coat on the model to seal the taped edges. This clear coat is a 2-part clear. It's mixed at a ratio of 2 parts clear, 1 part hardener, and then about 10 to 15% thinner for spray viscosity. Whenever I mix paints or clears, I always stir them very thoroughly before putting them in the gun. I'll mix the hardener with the clear and give that a stir for 2 minutes, and then I'll add the thinner and stir that for 2 minutes, and then check for viscosity. If I have to add more thinner, I'll do it at that point. I'm spraying with my Taiwan-made HVLP gun. It's a very well-made gun, and I really enjoy using it. It sprays between 19 and 22 psi, and the nice thing about the regulator is that it gives the yellow band, which is the spray range for this particular gun. You should always go over your model with a tack rag right before spraying it. Okay, so I have one coat of the clear coat on everything with the exception of the other side of the wing. I'm still waiting for this to dry. And I've decided I am not going to do the clear coat on the bottom, on this white here, this white primer. Remember, this is a test. This whole thing is a test. I'm using the model as a test bed. So I'm going to see how the blue over top of the clear coat looks compared to blue not over top of the clear coat. The other thing is I noticed on the wing that, I hope this stays in focus, but the areas here where I had taped before, those areas had like a lot of orange peel on them. The middle part was nice and smooth, very smooth, but the edges close to where I had taped before, they had, I hope you can see this, but they had a lot of orange peel. Now it has somewhat leveled out some, but it was really bad when I first sprayed it. That's what I was looking at so much. I didn't really know where to go with that, so I just went and sprayed the whole thing and see how it works. Just real quick, the second coat of clear over those previously taped areas, it did a pretty good job. It kind of leveled out, so it's not quite as obvious as it was before. So it has rained, and there's a little bit of a lull in the rain. I'm going to try to get the blue on. I'm a little bit nervous about this, and I'm also a lot excited. I really can't wait to see how this blue is going to look. I hope it turns out as well in real life as it has in my mind's eye.
Mixing of the blue was done in exactly the same way as was done with the clear, and I made up 300 milliliters of paint. My first spray on the fuselage was on the turtle deck, and that showed me that the paint was just too thick. It was not atomizing well, and it was not flowing out well. So I went back and added a little more thinner, about half again as much as originally added, and the paint did flow better at that point. However, it still was not quite right, and I got a little bit of orange peel along all the parts that were sprayed blue that day. It wasn't until the next day that I think I finally got the viscosity right.
Alright, the first coat of blue is on. I can't quite, or I didn't quite get a single coat coverage. There are a couple areas that are going to require another little spray. Um, this paint is very nice, but this is not the effect that I was hoping to get with this paint. I was looking for kind of the shimmery effect that I get with that Tamiya clear blue over a silver base. This is nice, don't get me wrong. It's just not really what I was looking for. Now the cowl doesn't look too bad. And right now it's cloudy and it's rainy and I'm underneath a tent, so in direct sunlight this might actually look better. This is one coat, and I got to add a little bit more right here. I didn't quite get enough on the bottom, and maybe over here as well, but overall the cowl actually doesn't look too awfully bad. The clear gloss underneath, does that help? Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Hard to tell. That's why I sprayed these over here. Now this is, I sprayed these, first, and you can see, I bet you can see that where that tape was that I had masked off first, the paint, I'm gonna have to go over it a second time, but it definitely telegraphs that. So I think I'm gonna have to do a light sanding from now on over the areas that actually have masking tape on them to try to get rid of that. Maybe that's just, I don't have this problem with the acrylics. Maybe it's just this kind of paint. I think I'll start opening some Christmas presents. Just a little bit of bleed through. Not bad, but what happened here? Oh, looks like my mask had a hole in it.
Lacquer thinner does a great job at removing the paint while the paint is still green. But once the paint is cured for 24 hours, this trick doesn't work.
Alright, overall not bad. Just really a little spot right there. You can hardly see it. Of course, this is on the bottom, so it won't matter. Alright, so I missed the spot masking. Guess I just didn't see it. But to get rid of it, I'm going to try two things. Now, I already know that the lacquer thinner will work, but this little bit right here, a little bit of bleed through, you can take the end of a knife, and right now the paint, it's pretty much flashed off, but it's still a little bit green, I guess you could call it. So it's kind of easy to move it away. So I'm going to try to do the same thing here. Try to just whittle away the paint, and then I'll use the lacquer thinner to try to finish it off. Alright, not bad at all. Alright, I am really interested to see how my registration codes are going to look. I'm going to see how that mask worked. So I'm going to start taking this off. It's still a little bit tacky. I probably should wait. But like any kid at Christmas, I just can't wait. Alright, so this is the second day of painting the blue, and today went much better. I was really, to tell you the truth, after the end of yesterday's painting session, I was a little bit disappointed. I wasn't feeling good about the paint. I wasn't feeling good about spraying it. So I made a couple of changes. One was I reduced the paint even more. Paint store guy told me to reduce it 1 part reducer to 2 parts paint. Well, I ended up making about almost 1.5 parts reducer to 2 parts paint, and that sprayed so much better. I also bumped the PSI up a little bit. That HVLP gun I'm using, it runs between 19 and 22 PSI. That's the recommended PSI. Pretty narrow range. So I was running about 20 PSI. Well, today I bumped it up to the max 22, and that in combination with the more reduced paint, it sprayed very well. Very little orange peel, a much smoother surface to the bottom of the wing. Matter of fact, it was doing so well with the bottom of the wing that I redid a couple of spots on the cowl and the top of the fuselage, and it actually helped to reduce the orange peel that had shown up in these areas. Now, Unfortunately, I didn't move the gun fast enough, and I got a few runs, as you can see right here. Fortunately, they're on the bottom, and I might not even do anything with that, to tell you the truth. But I did get a little bit of a run right here. I'll maybe see if I can sand these things out. I don't know how well this paint sands, but I'll let it thoroughly cure. But this up here had quite a bit of orange peel on it from yesterday, and just one coat of this newly thinned paint really did a nice job of getting rid of some of the orange peel. Not all of it. I think now I would shoot 2, maybe 3 coats of this thinner paint mix, and I think I'd have almost a perfect paint job. Of course, I'm still at the mercy of the elements. I sprayed the top here, and I sprayed the top of the turtleback. The turtleback was looking really quite bad yesterday, and just again a single coat with this thin, then it didn't totally cure it, but it looks much better than it looked yesterday. So at the end of yesterday, I was not feeling good. At the end of today, I'm feeling much better about this paint. Now, I don't know what I was thinking when I was masking this, but obviously I was off in La La Land somewhere. So I still have some more blue paint, and I can touch this up. I'll do it tomorrow. Speaking of which, so I used the paint from yesterday. I did not mix up a new paint today, and to keep it overnight, I put it in a metal container and then put that in a Ziploc baggie and then put that in the freezer, and that did a good job. It didn't seem to have hardened up any at all. It sprayed, it actually sprayed better today than yesterday because of the extra thinner. I am really stoked now that I've kind of got this paint sorted out. And the moral of this story is, don't ever trust the paint guy. So you can see I had a little bit of difficulty getting this tape off around the frame of the canopy. I guess all that paint I had put on, it really had I don't know, glued it down. But I'm probably, so I've got some areas here where the primer's showing, and even some of the red Bondo is showing. I think what I'm going to have to do is retape this and either do a paintbrush and try to fill with the paintbrush, or maybe respray again so I can fill in these areas. And I might as well mention now, talking about getting the tape off the canopy, I already know that my hatch is going to be a problem. I thought I had enough gap to where the paint would not seal in the gap for this hatch, but I've already tried opening this hatch up, and it is pretty well stuck down. I'm not sure how I'm gonna get this open. I may have to take my knife and kind of slice through the paint. I don't know if that's gonna work. I'm afraid to just try to pry it open. I'm afraid that that's gonna take paint with it. This one's gonna be a little bit of a challenge. I have managed to separate the sides of the top, the foretop and the aft. And then what I did, that I just took a thin chisel and, a putty knife, and just kind of rocked it back and forth and wiggled it back and forth, put my hand up underneath, and just kept doing that as far as I could along the back, and the front. And it doesn't look pretty, but I have managed to separate about here to here on the front and the back. Now the hard part is trying to get this sides taken care of. All right, we got it open. Now to try to clean it up. This has definitely been a learning experience for me. This automotive paint, it definitely sprays thicker and a little bit heavier than the acrylics that I like to use. So yeah, this has definitely been a learning experience. Good thing that this is just a test model.
I'm using a freehand mask here to prevent the overspray from reaching the far end of the hatch. I don't want the paint to dry and settle on the surface and create a rough, pebbly texture. I just want the main body of the spray to be concentrated on the hatch edges that I'm trying to touch out.
Alright, so this is the final piece of masking tape to be pulled, and the project should have all its painting complete. Well, I think the model is completely painted, and I think I can probably call this phase complete. One thing I've mentioned before, that I like to pull my masking tape pretty much just as soon as I'm done painting and I've cleaned the equipment, because if I don't, sometimes this happens. Now the blue on top has been on for at least 24 hours, so it's had a chance to really thoroughly cure. And the last little bit, this is like the last piece of masking tape to pull on the whole model, and a piece got caught on the tape and got pulled up. I think if I had pulled this tape when it was still a little bit green and still pliable, that would not have happened. So let's see, over here I did remask the canopy and I sprayed around the frame, and that looks better. Just one little pesky spot right here that wouldn't work, but that's okay. And then I sprayed the edges. I did get the black painted on the horizontal stab. Why on the real aircraft this is black and not blue, I can't tell you, I don't know, but I did what the real aircraft did. My little circular inner angles, they worked okay. I got a little bit of cleanup to do. They looked okay. For some unknown reason, I can't tell you why, I did not do it to this side. And I really can't tell you why. I don't know.
But I fixed it the next day, and I'll show you that in the next video.
The paint's complete. I'm going to let it sit for at least a day, maybe a couple days, and then start putting it all together. So that's a big milestone right there.